I remember that night when I felt like a stranger in my own home. My stepfather screamed at me with veins bulging from his neck, spit flying from his mouth as he pointed his finger accusingly. "You're nothing but a burden, Peyton. Your mother is exhausted dealing with you." And my mother? She just stood there in silence, eyes cast downward, refusing to meet my gaze. I had hoped she would defend me, say something, anything. But she didn't even look at me. That's when it hit me like a punch to the gut. I was truly alone in this world. My alpha friend Marcus had distanced himself from me too, because his girlfriend despised the fact that I was an Omega. She had made snide comments about how Omegas were only good for housework and bearing children, and Marcus hadn't stood up for me even once. Everyone seemed to think that being an Omega meant I was less than human, that I didn't deserve dreams or aspirations. I wanted so badly to matter to someone, to have value beyond my designation, but maybe that was asking too much. Maybe my fate was already sealed the day I presented as an Omega. The abuse at home had become routine. My stepfather would find any excuse to berate me: dirty dishes, late homework. Even the way I breathed seemed to irritate him. He had moved in 3 years ago after my biological father passed away. And since then, my life had spiraled into darkness. My mother had changed too, becoming a shell of the woman who used to read me bedtime stories and kiss my forehead. Now she just avoided conflict, which meant avoiding me. One afternoon after school, I was walking home with my backpack weighing heavy on my shoulders, not just from books but from the weight of existence itself. That's when I noticed a long black luxury car parked on our shabby street. It stood out like a diamond in a pile of coal. The tinted window rolled down, and the driver in a crisp uniform looked directly at me. "Peyton?" he called out. My heart jumped into my throat. How did he know my name? I nodded nervously, frozen in place on the cracked sidewalk. He extended his gloved hand, holding a thick manila envelope. "This is for you. Read it carefully." Before I could ask any questions, the window rolled up and the car glided away silently, leaving me standing there confused and slightly terrified. I rushed to my room, the small attic space, with a leaking ceiling that my stepfather had assigned me, and tore open the envelope. Inside were several official-looking documents, and a handwritten note on expensive paper. The note read, "If you want to change your life, come to this address. You are needed." An address was printed below along with a date and time: tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. My hands trembled as I read it over and over. Was this some kind of scam? A trafficking scheme? But then again, what did I have to lose? My life was already destroyed. I was barely surviving on the scraps of existence my family allowed me. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning on my thin mattress, wondering if tomorrow would bring salvation or something worse. The next day, I skipped my last 2 classes and took 3 buses to reach the address. My stomach churned with anxiety the entire journey. When I finally arrived, I found myself standing before a massive hospital, not just any hospital, but the most prestigious medical center in the city, where only the wealthy receive treatment. The building was all glass and steel, gleaming in the afternoon sunlight like something from another world. I walked through the revolving doors into an expansive lobby with marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. Everything smelled clean and expensive. I approached the reception desk, where a woman in a crisp uniform looked at me with barely concealed disdain, clearly noting my worn sneakers and faded jacket. "I'm Peyton," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "I was told to come here." Her expression changed immediately. She typed something into her computer and her eyes widened. "Oh, yes, you're expected. Take the private elevator to the 15th floor. Room 11507. She handed me a keycard, and suddenly her demeanor was respectful, which confused me even more. The elevator ride felt like ascending into heaven. Soft music played and the walls were lined with mirrors. When I reached the 15th floor, the hallway was quiet and luxurious, with thick carpet that absorbed every footstep. I found room 1507 and took a deep breath before pushing the door open. Inside, lying on a hospital bed surrounded by sophisticated medical equipment, was a man who looked to be in his late 20s. Despite the pallor of his skin and the dark circles under his eyes, he was strikingly handsome. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and when he turned to look at me, his eyes, a deep amber color, held an intensity that made me freeze. "You're here," he said, his voice rough but commanding. "You're the Omega who can save my life." I stood there speechless, not understanding anything. A nurse entered behind me and gently guided me to a chair. "Mr. Carlos here is in urgent need of a kidney transplant," she explained softly. "We've tested hundreds of potential donors, but you're the only match we've found. Your blood type, tissue compatibility, everything aligns perfectly." My mind reeled. "But how did you find me? How did you even know I existed?" Carlos shifted in his bed, wincing slightly from the movement. "I had my people search databases across the entire state. When your name came up as a potential match, I had you investigated." He paused, studying my face. "I know what you're going through at home, Peyton. I know about your stepfather's abuse and your mother's neglect. I know you feel worthless." Tears stung my eyes. How could this stranger know my deepest pain? "What do you want from me?" "I want you to save my life," he said bluntly. "In exchange, I'll pay you $500,000. Enough to start over, go to college, build a future far away from those who hurt you." $500,000. The number was incomprehensible. I had never seen more than a few $100s at once in my entire life. I looked at Carlos again, really looked at him. His breathing was labored, his complexion sickly. This powerful-looking man was dying. And somehow my worthless Omega body, the body everyone had told me was only good for serving others, could actually save someone's life. For the first time in years, I felt like I might actually matter. "When would the surgery happen?" I asked quietly. Carlos's lips curved into the faintest smile. "As soon as you agree. Time is running out for me." I thought about returning to that house, to the screaming and the cold shoulders and the constant reminder that I was unwanted. Then I looked at this dying man who somehow saw value in me, even if it was just biological. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll do it." The smile that spread across Carlos's face was weak but genuine. "You're giving me a second chance at life, Peyton. I won't forget this." Little did I know that decision would transform everything. The night before the operation, I sat alone in a sterile waiting room, watching the clock tick toward midnight. They had admitted me that morning and run countless tests. Blood work, scans, psychological evaluations. Everything happened so fast that my head was spinning. The hospital staff treated me with unusual care, which felt strange after years of being treated like garbage. They called me Mr. Peyton and asked if I needed anything. It was surreal. I couldn't stop thinking about death. What if something went wrong? What if I died on that operating table and nobody cared? My stepfather would probably celebrate. My mother might cry for a day, then move on with her life. Marcus wouldn't even know until weeks later. The realization that I could disappear from this world with barely a ripple was crushing. That's when I heard the soft whir of wheelchair wheels on linoleum. I looked up to see Carlos approaching, an IV pole attached to his chair. He was wearing a hospital gown and looked even more fragile under the harsh fluorescent lights. A nurse hurried after him. "Sir, you should be resting. The surgery is in 8 hours." "I needed to see him," Carlos said firmly, not taking his eyes off me. The nurse sighed and retreated, shaking her head. Carlos wheeled himself right up to where I sat. "Can't sleep." I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Up close I could see how much pain he was in. His jaw was clenched and his knuckles were white from gripping the armrests. "Talk to me," he said. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking about what happens if I don't wake up," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I'm thinking that maybe nobody would even notice I was gone." Carlos was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak but warm and real and human. "Listen to me carefully, Peyton. If you risk your life for me and something goes wrong, I will never forgive myself. You need to survive this. You need to come back." Something about the way he said it with such conviction, such need, made my chest tighten. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "Maybe not," he said, his amber eyes locked on mine. "But you're giving me the most precious gift anyone can give. That makes you important. That makes you matter more than you realize." I broke down then. Tears streamed down my face and I couldn't stop them. Years of pain and loneliness came flooding out. And Carlos just sat there, holding my hand, saying nothing. He didn't offer empty platitudes or tell me to stop crying. He just stayed with me. In that moment, I felt less alone than I had in years. Eventually, a different nurse came and insisted Carlos return to his room. Before he left, he squeezed my hand one more time. "See you on the other side," he said with a small smile. I watched him wheel away down the corridor, and for the first time, I felt genuine hope that tomorrow might bring something better. The surgery began at 8 in the morning. I remember the anesthesiologist telling me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before everything went black. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was pain, a deep throbbing ache in my side, but I was alive. I was breathing. A doctor appeared beside my bed, smiling warmly. "The surgery was successful. Peyton, you did beautifully. We removed your left kidney and it's already functioning in Mr. Carlos. You saved his life today." I tried to process this information through the fog of painkillers. "Is he okay? Can I see him?" "Not yet. You both need to recover. But I can tell you he's stable and improving already. You gave him a fighting chance." The next 2 days passed in a blur of pain medication, monitoring, and slow recovery. Every time I woke up, I asked about Carlos, but the nurses would only tell me he was doing well. Finally, on the 3rd day, they transferred me to a wheelchair and took me down the hall to his room. The transformation was stunning. Carlos was sitting up in bed, color returning to his cheeks. The gray pallor was gone, replaced by a healthy warmth. His eyes, which had been dull and tired, now sparkled with life. When he saw me, his entire face lit up. "Peyton," he breathed, and the way he said my name made my heart skip. "You're awake. You're okay. You look so much better," I said, maneuvering my wheelchair closer to his bed, like a completely different person. "That's because I am," he said, his voice stronger than before. "I feel like I've been reborn. Because of you." He paused, emotion flickering across his features. "How are you feeling? Are you in pain?" "Some," I admitted, "but it's manageable. The doctors say I'll recover fully." "Good." He looked at me intensely, as if memorizing every detail of my face. "I meant what I said before, Peyton. The money is just the beginning. You've given me back my life. I'm in your debt now." I tried to laugh it off. "Just wire the money to my account and we'll call it even." But Carlos didn't laugh. Instead, his expression grew serious. "It's not that simple. I want to do more than just pay you. I want to make sure you never have to go back to that house. Never have to suffer again. Will you let me help you?" I didn't understand what he meant, but something in his tone made me nervous. "Carlos, you don't owe me anything beyond what we agreed to. Maybe not legally," he said quietly, "but morally, emotionally. Peyton, you gave me something priceless. I want to give you the same a chance at a real life." Before I could respond, his assistant Blake entered the room carrying a briefcase. "Sir, I have the documents you requested." Carlos nodded and gestured for Blake to approach. "Peyton, before you leave this hospital, there's something I need to tell you. Something about who I really am and what I can offer you. Will you hear me out?" I nodded slowly, curiosity and apprehension mixing in my stomach. Whatever was coming, I could sense it would change everything. Carlos took a deep breath, preparing to reveal whatever secret he had been keeping, and I sat there in my wheelchair, still recovering from surgery, about to have my world turned completely upside down for the 2nd time in a week. After I left Carlos's room, the nurses wheeled me back to my own space where I spent the rest of the day staring at the ceiling, wondering what he wanted to tell me. My mind raced with possibilities. Who was Carlos really? Why was someone so obviously wealthy and connected staying in a hospital under what seemed like heavy security? I had noticed armed guards stationed discreetly throughout the 15th floor. That wasn't normal for regular patients. The next morning, Blake appeared at my door with unexpected news. "Mr. Carlos is being discharged today," he informed me in his crisp professional tone. "He's requested that you be discharged as well. The doctors have cleared you for release." "Already? But it's only been 4 days since the surgery. You're healing remarkably well. And Mr. Carlos has arranged for private medical care at his residence. He wants you to recover there, under supervision of his personal physicians." My defenses immediately went up. "I can go home. I don't need charity." Blake's expression softened slightly. "With respect, Mr. Peyton, going back to your current living situation would be detrimental to your recovery. Mr. Carlos is offering you an alternative." At least hear what he has to say. Before I could argue further, Carlos himself appeared in the doorway, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that made him look like a completely different person from the dying man I had met less than a week ago. He was still moving carefully, obviously sore from surgery, but the transformation was remarkable. "May I come in?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly very aware of how shabby I must look in my hospital gown. Carlos entered and closed the door behind him, leaving Blake outside. He pulled up a chair beside my bed and sat down with a slight wince. "I need to be honest with you about several things, Peyton. First, about what happens next. I can't let you return to that house. You can't tell me where I can or can't go," I said, trying to sound defiant despite feeling vulnerable. "You're right. I can't force you. But I'm asking you to listen." He pulled out his phone and showed me a document. "This is a report my investigators compiled on your home situation. Your stepfather took out loans in your name, over $50,000 that he lost gambling. Your mother co-signed. Legally, you're liable for that debt. The moment you turn 18 next month, creditors will come after you." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." "He forged your signature. We have proof. But proving fraud in court would take months and cost money you don't have. In the meantime, you'd be harassed by debt collectors and potentially face legal action." Carlos's expression was grim. "I've already taken care of the debt. It's paid off, but I did something else too. I had my lawyers send your stepfather a cease and contact order. If he tries to reach you or harm you in any way, he'll face criminal charges." I felt like I had been punched. "Why would you do all that? You barely know me." "Because you saved my life," Carlos said simply. "And because I recognize suffering when I see it. I grew up in an abusive home too, Peyton. I know what it's like to feel worthless and trapped. When I finally escaped and built my empire, I swore I'd help others in similar situations. You're giving me that chance." "Your empire?" I echoed. "Carlos, who are you really?" He was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Then he spoke. "My full name is Carlos Hale. I own Hale Industries, a multinational corporation with holdings in technology, real estate, and pharmaceuticals. I'm worth approximately $8 billion. I'm also one of the most powerful alphas in this city." The room seemed to tilt. Carlos Hale. The name was everywhere, on buildings, in newspapers, on television. He was the reclusive billionaire who rarely gave interviews, whose face was seldom photographed. And I had just given him my kidney. "This is insane," I whispered. "I keep a low profile because I have enemies," Carlos continued. "Business rivals who would love to see me fail. That's why the security is so tight. That's why I've been so careful about revealing my identity." He leaned forward. "But you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know exactly who you saved." My head was spinning. "So the $500,000 is still yours? But it's pocket change compared to what I want to offer you." He pulled out a folder and handed it to me. "I want you to come live at my residence. I have a penthouse with more rooms than I know what to do with. You'll have your own space, privacy, and access to anything you need. Education, counseling, medical care. All I ask is that you accept my help and focus on healing and building a future." I opened the folder to find documents outlining everything he had just described, along with photographs of a stunning penthouse apartment that looked like something from an architecture magazine. "This is too much. I can't accept this." "Why not?" Carlos challenged. "You've already given me the most valuable thing anyone could give, a second chance at life. Let me give you the same. Please, Peyton, don't go back to that house where you're abused and unwanted. Come somewhere where you'll be safe and respected." Tears welled up in my eyes. Nobody had ever offered me anything like this. Nobody had ever cared enough to even ask about my well-being. "What if I mess up? What if I disappoint you?" "Okay," I whispered. "I'll come with you." The smile that spread across Carlos's face was radiant. "Thank you. You won't regret this. I promise." He stood carefully and extended his hand to help me up. "Blake has already packed your belongings from your old house. We'll go straight to the penthouse. There's a medical team waiting to monitor both of our recoveries." I glanced at him, this mysterious billionaire who had entered my life so suddenly and turned everything upside down. "I don't know how to repay you for all this." "You already have," he replied, pressing the elevator button. More than you know. As the elevator doors closed and we descended toward the parking garage where a luxury car waited, I realized that giving Carlos my kidney hadn't just saved his life. It had somehow saved mine too. And this was only the beginning. 3 weeks had passed since I moved into Carlos's penthouse, and my family hadn't tried to contact me even once. Part of me had expected my mother to call, to check if I was alive at least, but there was only silence. Carlos explained that his lawyers had made it clear any attempt to reach me would result in legal consequences, and apparently that threat was enough to keep them away. I told myself I didn't care anymore. I had been mourning the loss of a family that never truly existed anyway. Living with Carlos was nothing like I had imagined. He gave me an entire wing of the penthouse, a bedroom larger than my old house's living room, a private bathroom with a tub I could practically swim in, and a small study filled with books. Every morning he insisted on driving me to follow up appointments at the hospital, even though he had a company to run. His assistant Blake would call repeatedly, reminding him of meetings and obligations, but Carlos would wave him off. Peyton's health comes first, he'd say firmly. What surprised me most was the little things he did. He'd return from his office with my favorite snacks. Somehow he had figured out I loved caramel popcorn and mint chocolate. He'd leave books on my nightstand that he thought I'd enjoy. Once he came home with an entire bag of art supplies, because I had mentioned in passing that I used to like drawing before my stepfather told me it was a waste of time. You should start again, Carlos had said, setting the supplies on my desk. You deserve to do things that make you happy. I had stared at the expensive sketchbooks and professional-grade pencils, feeling tears prick my eyes. Nobody had ever paid attention to my interests before, let alone encouraged them. That night, I drew for the first time in years, and it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. One afternoon, Carlos asked if I wanted to see his office. I had been curious about his work but hadn't wanted to intrude. When we arrived at Hale Industries headquarters, I was overwhelmed by the scale of everything. The building was 50 stories of glass and steel, with Carlos's name emblazoned at the top. Security guards straightened when they saw him. Employees practically jumped to attention in the elevators, and everyone we passed seemed to hold their breath until we moved on. His office was on the top floor, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. There were multiple seating areas, a conference table that could fit 20 people, and a desk that looked like it cost more than a car. This is where I spend most of my time, Carlos said, watching my reaction carefully. What do you think? It's intimidating, I admitted. All of this power concentrated in one person. Don't you ever feel overwhelmed? Every single day, he said quietly. That's why having you at home means so much. You're the only person who doesn't want something from me, who doesn't see me as Carlos Hale the billionaire. You just see me. His words made my chest tight. I walked to the windows and looked out at the sprawling cityscape below. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That I'm here, that you're doing all of this for me. It feels like I'm going to wake up back in that attic room. Carlos came to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. It's real, Peyton, and you belong here just as much as I do. That evening, Carlos surprised me by taking me up to the building's rooftop terrace. I hadn't known it existed. A private garden space with trees, flowering plants, and a stunning view of the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk fell. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. We stood at the railing, watching the sun set in shades of orange and pink. Carlos was quiet for a long time before he finally spoke. Can I ask you something personal? Of course, I said, leaning against the railing. Are you content here? Living with me, I mean. Not just the material things, but the actual situation. Do you feel trapped in any way? I turned to look at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. Trapped? Carlos, you've given me more freedom than I've ever had. Why would you think I feel trapped? Because I worry, he admitted, his amber eyes searching mine. I worry that you're only staying because you feel obligated, because I paid off your debts and gave you a place to live. I don't want gratitude, Peyton. I want you to genuinely want to be here. My heart began racing. There was something in his tone, something deeper than simple concern for a house guest. I do want to be here, I said softly. You've made me feel valued for the first time in my life. How could I not want to stay? Carlos turned to face me fully, and I could see the conflict in his expression. There's something I need to tell you, and I've been putting it off because I don't want to complicate things or make you uncomfortable. What is it? I asked, suddenly nervous. He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. These past few weeks, getting to know you, seeing who you really are beneath all the pain and trauma, it's changed something in me. You're not just the person who saved my life anymore. You're so much more than that. I couldn't breathe. I knew what was coming, and part of me wanted to run while another part wanted to stay and hear him say it. I have feelings for you, Peyton, Carlos said, his voice rough with emotion. Real feelings that have nothing to do with the surgery or gratitude or obligation. When I wake up, you're my first thought. When I'm at work, I'm counting the hours until I can come home to you. And I know this might be too much, too fast, but I can't keep pretending anymore. The world seemed to stop spinning. A billionaire alpha was standing in front of me, confessing feelings I had barely dared to hope for. You have feelings for me? I whispered. But I'm nobody. I'm just a broken omega with nothing to offer. Don't you dare say that, Carlos said fiercely, stepping closer. You're brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever met. You survived years of abuse and still have the capacity to be gentle. You gave a piece of yourself to save a stranger's life. How can you call yourself nobody? Tears spilled down my cheeks. I don't know how to do this. Nobody's ever wanted me like this before. Then let me show you what it's like to be wanted, Carlos said, reaching up to gently wipe my tears with his thumb. Let me prove that you deserve every good thing in this world. I'm not asking you to feel the same way right now. I just needed you to know the truth about what's in my heart. I looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and tenderness. My whole life I had been taught that omegas were worthless, that we existed only to serve others. But Carlos was looking at me like I was precious, like I was something worth fighting for. What if I told you that I've been feeling the same way? I said quietly. What if I said that I'm falling for you too, even though it terrifies me? Carlos's expression transformed, hope and joy flooding his features. Then I'd say we should stop fighting it and see where this takes us. He reached out and took my hand, interlacing our fingers. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. I want to do this right, he said. No rushing, no pressure. We'll take it as slow as you need. But know that from this moment forward, you're not alone anymore. We're in this together. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. For the first time in my life, someone saw me as more than just my designation or my past. Someone saw me as worthy of love. And standing there on that rooftop with the city spread out below us and Carlos's hand warm in mine, I finally believed that maybe, just maybe, I deserved happiness after all. But neither of us knew that our newfound connection would soon be tested in ways we couldn't imagine. 2 months into our relationship, Carlos and I had fallen into a comfortable rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. We hadn't made our connection official to the outside world yet, but within the walls of the penthouse, we were learning each other in ways that felt sacred. Carlos would work from home some days just to be near me, and I had enrolled in online college courses with his encouragement. He'd quiz me on my assignments over dinner, genuinely interested in my thoughts on literature and history. We'd watch movies curled up on the massive couch, and sometimes Carlos would fall asleep with his head on my shoulder, looking younger and more peaceful than I'd ever seen him. But I knew it couldn't stay hidden forever. Carlos was too public a figure, and eventually people would notice the omega living in his home. The first crack in our protective bubble came when his personal assistant Blake mentioned that several board members were asking questions about his living situation. They're concerned about optics, Blake had said carefully. A powerful alpha living with an unrelated omega without a formal bond could be seen as, I don't care what they think. Carlos had interrupted coldly. Peyton is under my protection, and that's all anyone needs to know. But I could see the worry in his eyes. In the world of business and high society, appearances mattered, and I was a liability he hadn't accounted for when he brought me into his life. The situation came to a head at a charity gala Carlos had been obligated to attend. He had asked me to come with him, his first public appearance with me at his side. I had been terrified but agreed because I knew it was important to him. The event was at a luxury hotel ballroom, with the city's elite politicians, business moguls, celebrities. I felt completely out of place in the expensive suit Carlos had bought me, acutely aware that everyone was staring at the unknown Omega accompanying Carlos Hale. We were standing near the bar when a tall, imposing alpha approached us with a predatory smile. I recognized him immediately from news articles. Logan Reed, the tech entrepreneur who had been feuding with Carlos for years. Their companies were direct competitors, and according to what I'd read, Logan had tried and failed to buy out Hale Industries multiple times. Carlos, Logan said smoothly, his eyes sliding to me with undisguised interest. Aren't you going to introduce me to your companion? No, Carlos said flatly, his hand tightening protectively on my lower back. Logan laughed, but there was no humor in it. How rude. I'm Logan Reed, he said, extending his hand to me. And you must be the mysterious Omega everyone's been whispering about. I shook his hand reluctantly and immediately regretted it. His grip was too firm, too possessive, and his alpha scent washed over me. Aggressive and dominating in a way that made my instincts scream danger. Nice to meet you, I said, trying to pull my hand back, but Logan held on a moment too long. Fascinating, Logan murmured, his eyes boring into mine. Tell me, what's an Omega like you doing with someone like Carlos? Surely you must know his reputation. He collects broken things and fixes them up. Is that what you are? His latest charity project. That's enough, Carlos said, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone I'd never heard before. Step away from him. Or what? Logan challenged, finally releasing my hand. You'll make a scene at a charity event? That wouldn't be good for your image. He turned back to me, and I saw calculation in his expression. Let me give you some advice, Omega. Men like Carlos don't actually care about people like us. He's keeping you around because you saved his life. But once he feels that debt is repaid, you'll be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. Don't mistake temporary gratitude for genuine affection. His words hit exactly where I was most vulnerable. All my deepest fears spoken aloud by a stranger who seemed to see right through me. You don't know what you're talking about, I said, but my voice wavered. Don't I? Logan leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. Ask yourself this. What happens when someone tries to hurt Carlos by hurting you? Because that day is coming and you'll realize you're nothing more than his weakness. A target, and eventually he'll have to choose between keeping you safe and maintaining his empire. We both know which one he'll choose. Before I could respond, Carlos physically inserted himself between us, his body language screaming threat. If you ever speak to him again, I will destroy everything you've built. That's not a threat, Logan. That's a promise. Logan smirked, clearly pleased at having gotten under Carlos's skin. See you around, Peyton, he said, emphasizing my name in a way that felt like a violation. Then he walked away, disappearing into the crowd of gala attendees. Carlos immediately turned to me, his expression shifting from fury to concern. Are you okay? What did he say to you? Nothing important, I lied, not wanting to admit how much Logan's words had shaken me. But Carlos knew me too well by now. Peyton, he said gently, guiding me toward a quiet corner away from the crowd. Tell me what he said. I took a shaky breath. He said you're only keeping me around out of obligation, that I'm your weakness and one day you'll have to choose between me and everything you've built. And he's right, isn't he? I am a liability. I'm putting you in danger just by existing in your world. Carlos's jaw clenched. Logan is a manipulative predator who enjoys psychological warfare. That's how he operates. He finds your insecurities and exploits them. Don't let him win. But what if he's not wrong? I pressed. What if staying with you puts both of us at risk? I wouldn't survive if something happened to you because of me. Carlos cupped my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. Listen to me very carefully. You are not a weakness. You are my strength. Yes, loving you makes me vulnerable in ways I've never been before, but I would rather have that vulnerability than live without you. Do you understand? Before I could respond, his phone buzzed urgently. Carlos frowned and checked it, and I watched his face go pale. What is it? I asked, suddenly afraid. It's the hospital where we had our surgery, he said, his voice tight. Your stepfather had a heart attack. He's in critical condition. My world tilted. Despite everything he had done to me, he was still technically my family. I need to go, I said automatically. Peyton, you don't owe him anything. I know. I interrupted, but I need to do this for me, not for him. I need to face this part of my past one last time. Carlos studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'm coming with you. We left the gala immediately and drove to the hospital in tense silence. When we arrived, my mother was in the waiting room, her face haggard with worry and guilt. She looked up when she saw me, and tears immediately started streaming down her face. "Peyton," she whispered. "You came. How is he?" I asked, keeping my distance. "They're not sure if he'll make it through the night. He's been asking for you. He wants to apologize." Part of me wanted to refuse, to turn around and leave them both to face the consequences of their choices. But Carlos squeezed my hand gently, and I found the strength to nod. A nurse led me to the intensive care unit where my stepfather lay connected to various machines, looking small and fragile in a way I'd never seen before. His eyes opened when I approached, and I saw genuine remorse there. "Peyton," he rasped, "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry for everything. I was a monster to you." "Yes," I said quietly. "You were. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I needed you to know that you were never the problem. It was always me. My anger, my failures, I took them out on you, and that was unforgivable." I stood there looking at this man who had caused me so much pain, and realized that I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. He was a stranger who happened to share a house with me for a few years. "I forgive you," I said, "not for him, but for myself. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." His eyes closed, tears leaking from the corners. "Thank you." I left without another word, and Carlos was waiting for me outside the door. As we walked toward the elevator, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had faced my past and released it. But just as we stepped into the parking lot, I felt rough hands grab me from behind. A cloth covered my mouth and nose, and I smelled something chemical and wrong. I tried to scream for Carlos, but the world was already going dark. The last thing I heard was his voice shouting my name, and then there was nothing but blackness. I woke up with a pounding headache, my hands bound behind my back and my body aching from being thrown around. The space around me was dark except for a single flickering bulb hanging from a high ceiling. I was in some kind of warehouse, abandoned from the looks of the rusted equipment and broken windows. My heart raced as memories flooded back. The hospital, the parking lot, someone grabbing me, Carlos shouting. How long had I been unconscious? Where was Carlos? Was he hurt? Finally awake. "I see," a familiar voice said from the shadows. Logan Reed stepped into the dim light, accompanied by 3 large men who were clearly hired muscle. He looked nothing like the polished businessman from the gala. Now his expression was cold and calculating, his alpha scent deliberately oppressive. "Sorry about the rough handling. My associates can be a bit enthusiastic. What do you want from me?" I demanded, hating how my voice shook. "What I want is simple. I want to watch Carlos Hale suffer," Logan said, pulling up a metal chair and sitting backward on it, arms crossed over the back. "You see, 5 years ago Carlos bought out my first company when I was struggling financially. He didn't need it. He just wanted to prove he could take it from me. That move cost me everything. My reputation, my investors' trust, nearly my entire fortune. I've spent years rebuilding, and now I'm going to return the favor by taking what matters most to him. Hurting me won't accomplish anything," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Carlos will find me." "Oh, I'm counting on it," Logan said with a cruel smile. "In fact, I've already sent him your location. He should be here any minute now. And when he arrives, I'm going to force him to make a choice. Hand over controlling interest in Hale Industries or watch you die. Either way, I win." Fear coursed through me, but alongside it was anger. I was so tired of being used as a pawn, of being the weak link that others exploited. "You're delusional if you think this will work. Carlos isn't going to negotiate with terrorists." "We'll see," Logan said, standing up. He walked over to me and grabbed my chin roughly, forcing me to look up at him. "You know what's truly pathetic? You actually believe Carlos loves you. But love is a weakness in our world, Omega. And weakness always gets exploited. Then I guess that makes you weak too." I shot back. "Because you're so obsessed with revenge that you've become exactly what you claim to hate, someone who uses others to feel powerful." Logan's expression darkened, and his hand moved as if to strike me, But suddenly there was a tremendous crash as the warehouse's main door exploded inward. Carlos stood in the doorway, flanked by at least a dozen security personnel and several police officers. His face was a mask of controlled fury, his alpha presence so overwhelming that even Logan's hired men backed away instinctively. "Let him go," Carlos said, his voice deadly calm. "Now." Logan grabbed me and pulled me to my feet, producing a knife from his jacket and holding it against my throat. "Don't come any closer or I'll open his throat." Everything seemed to move in slow motion. I felt the cold press of the blade against my skin, heard Carlos's sharp intake of breath, saw the police officers raising their weapons, but I also noticed something Logan hadn't. One of the security team members had circled around behind us, moving silently through the shadows. "This is your last chance, Logan," Carlos said, taking a careful step forward. "Release him and maybe you'll only face kidnapping charges. Hurt him and I promise you won't live to see a courtroom." "You think I'm afraid of your threats?" Logan snarled. "I've lost everything already. What more can you take from me? Your freedom, your life, every single thing you've rebuilt. I will erase you so completely that people will forget you ever existed," Carlos said, and the absolute certainty in his voice made even me shiver. "But if you let Peyton go right now, I'll show mercy. One chance, Logan. Choose wisely." For a moment, I thought Logan might actually consider it, but then his grip tightened and I felt the knife press harder against my throat. "Go to hell, Hale." He never finished the sentence. The security guard who had flanked us moved with lightning speed, grabbing Logan's knife hand and twisting it away from my throat. I threw my weight forward, breaking free of Logan's grip, and suddenly there were police officers swarming around us. Logan was wrestled to the ground, handcuffed and arrested within seconds. The entire confrontation was over almost as quickly as it had begun. And then Carlos was there, wrapping his arms around me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You're safe," he kept repeating, his voice breaking. "You're safe. You're safe. I've got you." I clung to him, shaking uncontrollably as the adrenaline drained from my system. "I knew you'd come. I never doubted it. I will always come for you," Carlos said fiercely, pulling back just enough to examine my throat where the knife had been. There was a small cut, barely bleeding, but his eyes darkened with rage at the sight of it. "He hurt you." "I'm okay," I assured him. "Carlos, I'm okay." The police took my statement and led Logan away. As I watched him being shoved into a patrol car, still shouting threats and curses, I realized something important. He had been wrong about everything. Love wasn't a weakness. It was what had saved me tonight. Carlos's love had moved mountains to find me, had brought an army to rescue me, had shown me that I was worth fighting for. A week later, Carlos took me to his lawyer's office for what he said was an important meeting. I had no idea what to expect. But when we arrived, there were documents spread across the conference table. "What's all this?" I asked. "These are adoption papers," Carlos said, watching my reaction carefully. "I want to make our relationship official in every possible way. I want you to be legally recognized as part of my family, with all the rights and protections that entails. No one will ever be able to question your place in my life again." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I stared at the papers. "You want to adopt me? But we have feelings for each other. Isn't that strange? The adoption is about legal protection and ensuring your security. But there's more," Carlos said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket. He opened it to reveal a stunning ring with a deep blue stone that seemed to capture light. "This is a bonding ring, Peyton. I'm asking you to be my mate, not just legally through adoption, but emotionally and spiritually for the rest of our lives. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a future together. I want everything with you." My heart felt like it might burst from my chest. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes," Carlos said simply. "I know it's fast and I know we've been through trauma together, but I've never been more certain of anything. You're my second chance at life in more ways than one. So what do you say, Peyton? Will you bond with me?" I looked at this incredible alpha, who had seen me at my lowest and still thought I was worth saving, who had protected me and cherished me and shown me what real love looked like. There was only one possible answer. "Yes," I whispered. 1,000 times yes. Carlos slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me with such tenderness that I forgot we were in a room full of lawyers. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. "You've made me the happiest alpha alive." We signed the adoption papers that day, making our bond official in the eyes of the law. And a month later, we held a small private ceremony where we exchanged vows and completed our mating bond. As I stood there with Carlos, promising to love him for the rest of my life, I thought about how far I'd come from that broken Omega living in an attic. I had given Carlos my kidney and saved his life. But in return, he had given me something far more precious. He had given me myself. He had shown me that I was worthy of love, capable of strength, deserving of happiness. Together we had faced darkness and emerged stronger. "What are you thinking about?" Carlos asked later that night as we lay tangled together in bed, both wearing our bonding rings. "I'm thinking about how you told me once that I gave you a second chance at life," I said, tracing patterns on his chest. "But the truth is, you gave me my first real chance at living. Everything before you was just survival." Carlos kissed my forehead gently. "Then let's make sure the rest of our lives are about more than just surviving. Let's actually live, Peyton, together." And we did. From that day forward, we built a life filled with love, purpose, and healing. I finished college, started working with Carlos at a foundation he established to help abused Omegas escape dangerous situations. He had turned his own trauma into a mission to help others, and I got to be part of that mission. We weren't perfect, and there were still hard days when my past would catch up with me. But Carlos was always there, patient and loving, reminding me that I was strong enough to face anything. And slowly, I began to believe it too. Years later, when people asked me about the scar from my kidney donation surgery, I'd smile and tell them it was the best decision I ever made. Because that scar represented the moment my life changed. Not just because I saved someone, but because I finally learned that I was worth saving too. Carlos and I had both been broken in different ways, both searching for something we didn't know we needed. And somehow, against all odds, we had found each other, two halves that made each other whole. And we lived truly, deeply, completely together forever.